Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, hey, Jim, look, you're on TV.
Hey,
Bye.
Jim. Oh, Jim, did you know that you're fired? Yeah, that's what happened allegedly at the field office in Los Angeles. Jim's Comey was, I don't know if he was in the break room, but he was meeting with other FBI agents. And the news came down at not a respectful manner, I believe, in letting somebody go. I
Well,
like face-to-face meetings or
Yeah.
deliver the news to the person himself.
Well, the missives came both from the President of the United States as well as from his Deputy Attorney General, who's overseeing the Russian collusion investigation, Rod Rosenstein, excuse me. And, it essentially, at least with the Rosenstein letter, essentially involved Comey's conduct during the Hillary Clinton investigation, Rosenstein writing, "It's not the function of a director to make such an announcement," referring to his press conference back in July exonerating Hillary Clinton, saying she would not be referred for prosecution. Rosenstein continued, "The director now defends his decision by asserting that he believed Attorney General Loretta Lynch had a conflict, but the FBI director is never empowered to supplant federal prosecutors and assume command of the Justice Department. In fact," said Rosenstein, "Mr. Comey, quote, laid out his version of the facts for the news media as if it were a closing argument, but without a trial. It is a textbook example of what federal prosecutors and agents are taught not to do." And that's what they're hanging their hat on. A lot of people are incredulous and they don't believe that's the real reason. It seems to me there's sort of a critical mass that occurred. It's the perception, at least by some, I think also in the Trump White House, certainly in Congress, as per Comey's last exchange with Trey Gowdy and other members of Congress when he appeared, that they're slow walking the investigation into who the leaker was of Mike Flynn's name. I think they're just then just the loss of confidence that occurred throughout the campaign cycle, where he was exonerating her while making the case why she should be prosecuted. Then he reopens it 10 days out, and he kind of upset everybody because it seemed that Comey was sort of flying by the seat of his pants to protect his political reputation and not to go wherever the facts lead and then take the appropriate legal action within his purview once those facts were gathered. That's the criticism lodged again today in the Wall Street Journal about Comey, as they have lodged that criticism before. So for more on this, let's get an internal perspective, somebody who knows the agency like we don't. He is the former assistant director of the FBI, James Kallstrom, who joins us now. James, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, guys.
So what's your reaction to Comey's dismissal?
No, I'm totally in favor of it. I've had big problems with the director. He's a decent guy. I think there's no malice or forethought in him, but he made some huge, in my view, judgment errors. Lack of common sense. And the first time really was the killer blow when the criminal referral came to the department and they forwarded it to the FBI to conduct an investigation. And according to press reports and some of Comey's own testimony, he was told by justice that he couldn't even call it a criminal investigation. It had to be an inquiry. And apparently there was never a grand jury impaneled. Attorney General wouldn't approve it. So, you never, ever have a major investigation without a grand jury, because otherwise you cannot compel testimony. You cannot serve search warrants. You cannot do all the logical things that happen in all major investigations. So the big mistake was that Jim Comey started dancing with the devil. In other words, rather than stand up and say, "Oh, look, I demand that we're going to do a proper and thorough investigation, and therefore I need a grand jury," and with further denials, then he should have stood up, in my estimation, and resigned from the FBI as the director.
Well,
Let me finish. Not conduct this hollow investigation, which, by the way, there were so many felonies laying around that even without compelling anything, he got a long list, and then of course he did, terrible damage to his reputation by having that press conference, laying out all the elements of a prosecution, and then making the claim that he was not going to have further prosecution of her. That his recommendation would be such. So,
Yeah,
combination of things. But go ahead.
yeah, but then 10 days before the election, he came out and said we're reopening the investigation now, looking at other emails that were classified that have been leaked. I mean, do you think that played a part in it too?
To me, that was another big problem.
Yeah.
Look, they didn't act on major felonies, including violation of the Espionage Act, the Federal Records Act, conspiracy, perjury, obstruction of justice. They didn't act on any of these things. They didn't conduct any investigations of the IRS scandal. They didn't do a lot of things because justice wouldn't let them do it. So I don't know what he thought he could find on that sex pervert's laptop that was any worse than the stuff they already left on the table. So to me, it was nonsensical. I don't understand the purpose there.
Well, the Wall Street Journal, and we'll get your reaction to this, says this in their editorial today. The reality is that Mr. Comey has always been most concerned with the politics of his own reputation. He is political in precisely the way we don't want a leader of America's premier law enforcement agency to behave. Are the examples that you're discussing evidence to support the contention in the Wall Street Journal?
I think they're 100% right on. Jim Comey, to a fault, had an ego the size of the globe. And it wasn't about him. It was about the FBI. And he brought discredit to the FBI. I got literally dozens and dozens of letters and from people in the public I've never even heard of, who were totally confused about the rule of law and why the FBI was doing what they were doing. And, of course, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of retired agents felt that way. And a great majority of agents in the FBI felt that way. I never spoke to anybody involved personally with the investigation, but a number of agents communicated with me. I go to retirement dinners and all these other things. So, there was a lot of heartburn concerning how he was operating.
Well, that's an important point. It's one that Judge Napolitano made on Fox News yesterday as well, is the morale inside and whether you have the leader of an organization undermining the credibility of the organization and thus the esprit de corps of these FBI agents doing important investigative work, not just in the political space, but also in essentially national security space. And if the leader has lost the confidence of his subordinates, then it's time to go, isn't it?
Yeah, without question.
What?
And the president made the right decision. The Democratic Senate, pretty much wouldn't let him get anybody in the Justice Department for a long, long time. And I think it was only 2 weeks ago that the Deputy Attorney General, who's quite a good guy, and he was approved in the Senate by almost everybody. I think there were a few negative votes, but
right.
Obviously, he wanted someone to look into this thing and do an investigation of the whole Clinton thing, and look at Comey's actions. And he wrote this memo, and the president acted on it. And I think that was the proper thing to do.
So was there anybody inside the agency that was pulling for him or cheering him on or wanted him to remain as FBI director?
Oh, I'm sure there were some. I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure his senior staff wanted him to stay because they wanted his, jobs to be intact. But, that's how bureaucracies work. But
sure,
I have to, it's not a scientific answer I'm giving you, but if I had to guess, the vast, vast majority of people in the FBI were not happy with his leadership, or in this case, the lack of, leadership in the case of making these decisions. And he did some things that were just outrageous. He had press releases going out on Friday afternoons. Did that twice. That's what that's what people do. That don't want their thing to ever make the news.
Right.
The FBI shouldn't be doing things like that. And just he was just so inconsistent in his statements about talking about this but not talking about that. And supposedly the deputy director of the FBI a few months back went over to the White House to some meeting and told Reince Priebus, hey, don't worry about anything. There's nothing here in this Russia thing. It's all BS. Well, if that's the case, why is this investigation continuing? Why, who knows?
Well,
But,
that's an interesting point because part of this, and Senator Susan Collins made this point yesterday. President Trump didn't fire the FBI; he just fired the director. So you've got an acting director in Andrew McCabe, who, by the way, is a friend of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. His wife was supported at a Democrat run for state senate by Governor Terry McAuliffe for Virginia. Not so it's not like he's some kind of Republican partisan.
well,
and
I've stated on TV at least 5 times.
and then
Not continue.
well, right, and then
Cannot-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
McCabe, in my view, cannot continue as the acting director. He's too tarnished by all this. That investigation was going on while he was a senior person in the line of command, and here he is having dinner with Terry McAuliffe. I mean, you don't do that.
Right.
If you're an FBI person.
Right.
I mean, that's just, in my view. I mean, if I was there, I would have tried to fire him for such conduct.
Well, but this goes to my point: is the dismissal of Comey, but then you've still got Andy McCabe as your acting director, and over at Justice, you've got Rod Rosenstein, who was approved 94-6 by the Senate, who Sally Yates on Monday said she has confidence he can oversee the investigation. She has full confidence in him. Don't need a special prosecutor. So I just go to the political football that this has become, and the Democrats suggesting this is some kind of Nixonian removal of a person who's investigating you. And it's just hard to make that case out, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's all. Yeah. I had to almost lose my lunch listening to Schumer last night on television. I mean, I don't say that coming from any political angle because, believe it or not, I don't feel that I'm a political person. I just kind of deal with the facts. But, they had no problem with the fact that Hillary Clinton, none of those things that I mentioned, none of those felonies, which was severely harmful to our country, and never mind the Clinton Foundation and the pay-to-play and all that stuff. I didn't even mention that. They had no problem with that. They had no problem with that being left on the table at all. No mention. And this nonsense that, Trump did this to stop this so-called Russian investigation, which is, I think, is just absolutely bogus. But, time will tell.
Yeah, and quickly, who will his replacement be?
I don't know. And back to McCabe, he may not be the acting director by the end of the day or at the end of the week. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
I can't certainly speak for the White House, but
what about your friend?
I'm hoping it's somebody with vast investigative experience, tremendous integrity, a good communicator, a good leader. I think I just disqualified about 95% of the people that would want the job.
What about your friend Rudy Giuliani?
Well, I think it would be tough. I think it would be very tough to have a guy like Rudy, and I've got a lot of good friends down there. Joe DeGeneva,
Mm-hmm.
and even myself. I mean, I'm not a candidate for the job, but someone who's been closely associated with Donald Trump and supported him in his campaign, is probably not the person he should put in there now, because it would be nothing but, just all out, phony news war for the next year. Headlines in the New York Times every day. And so we need to find someone that's probably, less committed to anything in particular. But, Rudy would be a great director, and if I wasn't as old as I would be, I would try to be the director. But I would understand perfectly, having known Donald Trump for 40 years, that, why that can't happen. And I have no great desire at my old age to actually get involved with, with all those people in the swamp down there.
Well, we appreciate your desire to come on our show and talk about these important issues and share your insights. James Kallstrom, former Assistant Director of the FBI, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, they're very important issues, and I thank you guys for talking about them.
All right, he joined us on
have a good day. God bless.
You
God
too.
bless both.
Thank you very much. You too.
Turnkey Depot answer line.